July 16th, 2011, 1:33 in the morning. That is the reason why I'm making this video. That is the time that changed my whole outlook on my own life, my marriage, my relationships. Now, July 16th was a Friday like any other day, really, as far as I can remember at least. It was a good day at work, I know that. That night I was supposed to hang out with a group of my close friends. Two of the usual three couldn't make it, so it ended up just being myself and one of my best friends and a coworker at the time named Greg. We spent the evening talking and relaxing as we try to do every 2 weeks or so, just to help maintain our sanity. Around 11:30 or so at night, Greg decided he was going to go home, and his wife has just gotten off work and spent time with her. My wife had long since gone to bed, tired from the day of taking care of our youngest daughter, who at the time was just 1 year old. Now, instead of going to bed and all that, I decided to stay up and watch a movie. Pulled up Netflix and chose to watch a movie called The Fighter. Overall, the movie's very good. If you haven't seen it, it's about a young boxer played by Mark Wahlberg. He grows up and out of the shadow of his drug-addicted brother, played by Christian Bale. The movie ultimately is about changing your life and moving past the struggles and sins and issues in our past in the rearview mirror. Now, after the movie was over, I had to go to the bathroom. Tends to happen to everybody. And while sitting there, I was convicted. I don't know why that day. I don't know why that Friday night. But the message was very, very clear. It was time to change my life. I knew that things were going to be very painful for the rest of that night and into that morning. So I went into my bedroom. My wife was sound asleep, and I noticed that the clock said 1:28 a.m. I sat down in bed, and my wife Becky was facing away from me. Now, if she goes to bed before I do, she leaves the bedside light on. Usually it makes me feel good that she does that, but that night it made me feel vulnerable. I put my hand on her, knowing that it was probably the last time of the night that I would be welcome for that. Now, deep down, I knew how much I had hurt myself, but I also knew that my wife didn't know how much I was hurting her, and it was going to be a blindsided hit. So I reached over and, said, honey, and she stirred a little bit. I said, honey, I need you to wake up. And she stirred a little bit more and sat up, said, are you okay? And I said a lot more firmly, I said, I need you to wake up. This time she sat up, she looked at me. And that was when I realized this was going to be very, very difficult, and I could not prepare myself. She asked if I was okay. I said, no, not really. It's the only response I could muster. I need to talk to you about something really important. I need to tell you something that I know is going to hurt you very much. She said, okay. So I sat there for a minute or so before I could really do or say anything. I remember looking at the clock and seeing the time, and it was 1:33 in the morning. And I looked at her and said, honey, I've been addicted to pornography. Now, from that point, the conversation became one of the most painful and difficult I've ever been in. To see the woman that I love in so much pain was excruciating. To see her in so much pain because of me was unbearable. Now, at first, it seemed like she was almost calm about the subject. She asked me a lot of questions. How long has this been going on? How often? Are you looking at pictures or video? Where are you going for these things? Have you tried to stop? Has this been going on our whole marriage? Now, I tried to explain myself as best and as honestly as I could. And this was my introduction to being truly honest and transparent. It was pain. So my wife said something that I expected would come eventually, but I couldn't really prepare for it or prepare to hear it. And in this small pause in the conversation, she says, you cheated on me. Now, those 4 words were like being stabbed in the chest, but all I could respond was, I know. Not only to hear words that are so damning, so penetrating, so painful, but also to admit them immediately made me second guess my decision to tell my wife. But thank God it was too late. I couldn't go back, couldn't take those words back. So after the questions, I told her how I wanted to help her, or I wanted her help to become a better man, to become a better husband, to become a better father. And I felt that only through her help and her accountability that I could be free from these chains that pornography addiction been strangling me in. I told her that I needed her to help me beat something that had beaten me time and time and time again. Now, there was a big problem with this. She didn't want to be anywhere near me at this point. And frankly, I couldn't blame her at all. So after that, the rest of the conversation was a blur. It was a whirlwind of shame and guilt and regret and pain and joy. I had finally accomplished something that I wasn't sure I would ever be able to do. I was able to do something right. Truly right, something that was going to help me and something that was going to help my family. And I was just overwhelmed with this joy to finally be free of it and get it out in the open. And it was awesome. Amidst all the joy, though, I knew the gravity of what I had just told my wife, and it was starting to sink in. She went from being sad to needing more information to angry. She was upset at the man in whom she had placed so much of her trust that was hers and only hers. And now I had violated her, and I had violated our wedding vows. Now, I had somewhat expected what came next, sort of like those 4 words earlier, but again, I wasn't prepared. She got up, she got dressed, and she said she needed to leave for a while. I asked her to stay, but she said she wanted to leave. Now, I wanted her to stay badly because I was afraid it was going to be days before I would see her again. I felt broken and ashamed, and so I just let her leave. She later on told me that if I had just come after her and I had truly begged her to stop and to stay, she would have stayed. Thankfully, she did come back. That's awesome. Now, in that period of time there, our daughter, she woke up. She had colic, and so she had a lot of difficulty sleeping. And frankly, I went in beside my daughter in her crib and put my hand on her, and I cried. I knew that I had now hurt my wife, but I'd also hurt my daughter's mother. And I didn't know what all of this was going to come about and how this was going to play out. Now, I honestly didn't know if she was going to come back home. I found out later that this offended her. She couldn't believe that I thought she would ever abandon us. And I never thought for a second that she would abandon our daughter, but I was terrified that my decision to really do a good thing to bring all this mess out was going to permanently damage our relationship. My greatest fear was that my wife was going to leave the house and get in a car accident, and in the blink of an eye, my whole world was going to change. Now, the good news is things didn't happen like that. She came home and we settled in. After a few days, things started to get better, but during those days, it was pretty rough. We barely spoke to each other, and when we did, it hurt. Our conversations were a mixture of questions about my struggles with pornography addictions and then her expressing her feelings about the situation. It was the biggest riff in our marriage, hands down, by far, without question. But that story doesn't end there. Over the course of time, I became dedicated. I became passionate about pursuing a life that was free from pornography addiction and free from any of the sex addiction in my life. I wanted it to be gone. And more than that, I also wanted to help other people. So it wasn't just benefiting me and my wife, but it was benefiting others as well. So in that story, one of the most painful times of my life, I can tell you now that it has played the biggest role of any decision in my life thus far. I've changed careers. I have a happy marriage. My wife and I now have 4 children, not just the one. We are pursuing a way and pursuing a life that will help other people so that they don't have to walk down the difficult path for as long as we did. And that is what all of this is about. My hope, my joy is that you can find something sooner than my wife and I did, that you can get freedom from these addictions faster than I ever could have by learning from my experiences, by learning from science and research. And I want to help you do that, and I want to walk that path with you.